meeting as well. And yeah, okay. So I'll just share my screen and we can begin with today's lecture. Okay. First of all, I really hope that okay, there's some echo, I think. Yeah. Okay, so I hope my screen is visible. I am audible to all of you. And okay, so we had officially ended the weekly lectures or weekly, extra sessions that were being conducted for this particular course, that is Introduction to Professional Scientific Communication. This will be more of a revision kind of lecture. So we have done a surplus of these previous year questions and questions in general. Over here, we are just going to do a recap of all the concepts that have been taught to you in the course so that it can just be like a revision video for you, right? So that is what we are going to target over here. All the lectures as much as we can actually cover up. 2 hours is a very good time. So I think most of it we'll be able to cover, right? We'll go at a good pace and we'll be able to cover it. For those of you who might be seeing this particular lecture as your first one in this particular series, I have conducted, extra practice sessions for this course wherein we have previously discussed multiple kinds of questions, how to solve those questions, what is the rationale behind them, and all of them are actually available. I think the links have been shared to you on the NPTEL course website as well. Right. So, for one final time, I'll briefly introduce myself also. So, I am Arveen Kaur. I am currently a PhD scholar at Department of Biological Sciences and Bioengineering at IIT Kanpur. Right. And along with that, I am also student of Professor S. Ganesh. This is one of the courses that we have also taken as an initial coursework when we had joined PhD, right? So yes, we have also learned, been on the learner end of this, right? Along with NPTEL, we are basically bringing this out to the other learners as well, people outside of our institute also. With having said that, I can actually begin with today's recap or revision session, right? So we can start. So we talk about the course. When we talk about the course, it says Introduction to Professional Scientific Communication, right? So the major concept in the course title itself is communication, right? So first we need to understand what is communication, what are the various types of communication that are there, so that further we can assess that uh, which kind of communication will be like casual communication, which kind of communication will be a professional communication, what are the changes or modifications that you need to do in your speech or in your, verbatim or even, in your written communication in order for it to be professional, right? So and the professional, the kind of professional that we are dealing with over here is majorly like proposal writing, proposal pitching to others, right? Or paper writing, or how you pitch your work or your research to others, right? That is the kind of professional communication that we will be dealing with in this particular course, right? So, when we talk about types of communication, the first kind of communication is verbal communication, right? So, along with visual communication, wherein I'm showing you a screen over here, it has some words written on it, and you can also read those words. Along with that, you can also hear or listen to my voice, right? You can see that I am saying something. You can see what I'm saying written on the screen, but you can also hear me, right? So that is kind of a verbal communication also, right? If, for instance, I was not sharing my screen and my video was turned on, only my mic was turned off, on, my video was not on, it will solely be a verbal communication, right? So I hope you all understand what verbal communication means, right? So in case of verbal communication, again, it could either encompass, oral communication, like for instance, when my mic would have been turned on, my video and my screen sharing was off, it would have been a kind of oral communication. Or for instance, once you go to some particular, meeting wherein there is an orator who is giving a speech. That is the kind of communication that is oral communication, right? And then there could be another variant in it, which is written communication, right? So written is also kind of verbal because it includes a verbatim, right? There are words that are required for that communication as well, right? So if you are reading some article, if you have taken a journal, it will also be a part of verbal communication, right? Then comes non-verbal communication. So in this, like words might not be necessary for this kind of communication, right? So it includes communication such as gestures, right? So if I just fold my hands and if I bow in front of you, so it will be like I am welcoming you, right? Or I'm giving you respect. Or if I give you a thumbs up, that means that okay, I am comfortable with what you are doing, right? I approve of it, something like that. So it encompasses the kind of communication that comes with gestures, right? Then comes visual communication. Now, this is also a big, umbrella term, visual communication. It contains communication such as, the traffic signals, for instance, that is shown over here also. So over here in traffic signals, what is happening? You are looking at a sign, and then accordingly, you know what the sign means, right? It has been taught to you. Previously, some of them are very common sense based signs that okay, an arrow to pointing towards right means right turn, right? Arrow pointing towards left means left turn, right? Something with the that stop sign, it just means that you need to stop, something like that, right? And there are multiple of these symbols, and actually whenever you take a driving test before you get your learner's license, you are supposed to know what these signs mean, right? So they take a test of you based on what various signs mean. So that is one form of visual communication. Another form of visual communication would be that a schematic, right? For instance, I'm saying that this is how an aeroplane is manufactured, right? And I am not writing it as a flow chart, so I'm not giving any written pieces over there. What I'm showing is that okay, it is a pictorial representation of the main body of the airplane, the wings of the airplane, it getting assembled at one end, then some kind of other work going on in it. So I'm not an expert in how that line would work, but I hope you get the essence of what I was saying, right? So after having understood what communication is, right? What are the types of communication? As I said, we then need to understand what is professional communication, right? So professionalism that we are dealing with over here is academia based, right? Mostly. So because it is academia based, we have talked a lot about research in this particular course, right? So that is why this question comes, where do research ideas come from, right? So it is a very a question that is very naive as also very complex at the same time, right? So it is a it is a difficult kind of question, right? So one cannot exactly answer where research ideas are coming from, right? But you can have an idea about, you need to be aware all the time, right? You need to observe things very nicely. You need to make good observations, and on the basis of those observations, you should be able to come up with hypotheses, right? So that is basically how research ideas develop, right? Now, there is this particular representation from this paper by Duncan et al. That I have previously discussed in one of the sessions, which says that there are three stages of research idea formation, basically, right? First is the generation of research idea, right? We are going to study about what this is. The second is refinement of the research idea that is generated, right? So once you generate a research idea, you need to refine your problem, right? After your problem is refined, you need to evaluate the research idea, right? Then you need to perform experiments or perform validation studies, that okay, this is what I thought of. Eventually, I think this is what is happening, and I am doing these set of experiments or these set of studies to prove that this indeed is happening, right? So that is evaluating, right? This particular research idea, right? So yeah, so this is a slide that Sir had also actually kept, which says that these are the six, questions which will help you, in life, in research, and in communication, right? So, what Rudyard Kipling had said is, I have six honest serving men, right? They taught me all I knew. I call them what and where and when and how and why and who, right? So, it is a four-liner, but it has a very deep meaning, because these are the six major questions, right? If you can answer these six major questions regarding any topic, you will have immense knowledge about that topic, right? So, if you can tell that what is happening, when did it happen, where did it happen, right? Then you go into mechanistic details, how did this particular thing happen, right? If you have elucidated the mechanism, then why is it happening, why is what is happening is happening, right? And what factor is responsible for that to happen, right? So if these are the set of questions that universally, if you know about any particular subject, you will have immense knowledge on that subject, right? So, yeah, that is what the slide means, right? So, and it also reaffirms the idea of where these research ideas will come from, right? It will always come from questioning, right? And putting up and posing the right kind of questions. So, we might already know what is happening, right? We might already know, once upon a time, we already knew that we can see that sun is going on in a cyclic manner. It is coming up in the east, setting in the west. And we could continuously see that happening, right? Our ancestors could. But like, on top of that, they built up why this is happening, how can we explain this, etc. Right? That is why we have the knowledge about that rotation revolution cycle now, right? Then this is okay. There is some noise that is coming from outside. Just wait. Okay. Yeah. So there was this other slide that we had discussed very intently in the session itself, which says about how basically research progresses, right? So the x-axis has time or effort that is being taken, and y-axis has progress that happens between that time, right? So, what the first, if you look at only the first curve, you can see that there are three distinct phases represented in three distinct colors, right? So, the first stage is infancy, right? It means that when the idea is born, right? Then the infancy stage is slow, right? Because you are understanding what is going on. Based on that, you're formulating hypothesis, you're thinking about multiple things, right? And then you actually start working on those things, right? Then there will come a phase which will have rapid development, right? So that is this yellow colored phase, right? Eventually you will come to a phase that has this red colored that is represented by red color, which is maturity, right? So there will be a phase wherein you will do a lot of experiments, a lot of them will work out, a lot of them won't, but whatever will work out will keep, accumulating, and it will develop rapidly. But because a lot of it is also not working out, you will eventually reach a plateau kind of position, right? So all these things that I had done, these things work, but now I have reached a plateau, right? Because not everything that I have planned has worked, right? Now at this stage, it is not the correct stage where we should leave our research and just move forward, right? Because that is not a complete study then, right? Instead, what we should do is at this plateau, we need to sit down, reassemble our thoughts based on the studies that we have done. We know that, okay, now we are sure that this definitely is not happening. We are definitely seeing results in this direction. I think I need to sit and modify my hypothesis a little so that I can focus on this thing that is working, right? And I can definitely neglect this thing that I know is not working, right? So I know for sure now that. This is not the answer. Now I just need to not do this and find out what is the answer, right? So, failure is also teaching you that, okay, this definitely is not true, right? So, even if you fail 5 times, you will know that five different ways of what not to do, right? So, that is also a learning, right? Especially in research, because it is not like everything that you are planning will work out, right? Because then it it is not like that. That is why we need to do research, right? Whatever we are thinking, if that was already true, even if there is literature to support that thinking, then based on theoretical studies and theoretical papers itself, we would have progressed, right? But that is not the case, right? We need to do research because sometimes, life specifically, it will throw curveballs and you will not understand why this happened. This was not supposed to happen, right? And then you will probably discover something intriguing that is making it happen, right? So that is why research is important. So yeah, at this point, you should not just abandon your research. Okay, I will publish whatever I have. I know it doesn't make sense. It will go in a lesser impact factor. I will just, report my observations. It is not like that, right? So you have to think, you have to recollect your thoughts, you have to, modify your hypothesis. And based on that, you have to start again, right? So again, when you are doing this recollection part, you are trying to modify whatever you had initially thought of, right? That phase will again be a slow phase, right? But eventually, once you get the right questions, start doing the right things again, start the experimental process again, you will again achieve these stages of rapid development and another plateau, right? So whenever you are satisfied with your result, right, that okay, I think this complete thing can be one complete story. And now, whatever work is remaining, I can pose it as an open question to the research society, right? At that time, you can, just finish your research, compile your research, publish it. Or you can, the open question that was remaining, you can just start working on it with a different set of people, right? So that is how research works. Also, this particular inset that is taken from this infancy phase shows that even in infancy phase, right, the overall accumulated curve looks like, an upward growth. But it is not always like that, right? There are constant delays, there are constant setbacks at each phase, right? It is just that how many, creative steps you are taking to, after every setback so that you are eventually progressing, right? That is what is shown over here, right? So this was an example that I was discussing in one of the lectures, which is that if we consider that the infancy phase, in the infancy phase, we had some general idea, right? So in this, the initial idea and work carried out on that idea is presented, right, in the infancy phase. So, for example, my idea was gel pens write more smoothly than other kinds of pens, right? After that, I will basically do some research on it. That is the rapid development phase, wherein work towards proving the initial idea and collecting data is done, right? Then, for instance, over here, I say that I will test various types of gel pens against liquid ink pen, ink-based pens, ballpoint pens, pencil, fountain pen, etc. Right? After I have done all these studies, I will maybe plateau at some stage, and that will be based on the data obtained, and I will make observations and inferences. Right? So, after this, there are some possibilities that might occur, right? So, will the hypothesis be proven? What was the hypothesis? That the gel pens write more smoothly than other kinds of pens. Development and maturity phase, right? The other possibility is that we will have to modify the hypothesis for it to be proven, right? And third is that the hypothesis is definitely not correct and it will be nullified, right? So in this case, based on the data that I have attained over here through research and through testing, we will see which one of these is going to be true. Right. So, what were my observations when I did this experiment? That gel pens work more smoothly on good quality paper, but lose the battle on lower quality paper. Right. So, if the GSM of the paper is good, it will work very smoothly. But if, for instance, it is a rough paper or a chart that recycled paper, it will smudge. It will not work nicely. Right. Then gel pens tend to smudge on paper, right? Even on the smoother papers, they smudge. And gel pens are unable to work on wet surfaces, right? For instance, the ballpoint pens, they can actually work on wet surfaces also, right? But in case of gel pens, they are not working on wet surfaces, right? These are my observations. Hmm. So, based on this, what I should do is I should modify my hypothesis, right? So, either I can say that, okay, my hypothesis is not true, or I can say that maybe I can modify my hypothesis a little and it can still be proven, right? So, what will be my new hypothesis? That gel pens write more smoothly than other kinds of pens if the paper quality is good and it is not damp or wet in any sense, right? So now this, includes whatever observation I have had before, right? It definitely gives a rigid set of examples that, okay, only in this case, gel pen is going to work nicely, right? It is nice, but there are some things you need to keep in mind while starting to write with a gel pen, right? Then again, maybe I will do some set of testing wherein I will keep multiple kinds of good GSM papers. In that, I will test multiple kinds of pens. And according to that, I will make a new observation at maturity, right? So, what was the initial hypothesis? The gel pens write more smoothly than other kinds of pens. Then I did modify my hypothesis for it to be correct. And the new hypothesis is the one we talked about last, which was gel pens write more smoothly than other kinds of pens if the paper quality is good and it is not damp or wet in any sense, right? Then we come to another part of what we have studied, which is the enquiry wheel, right? So this enquiry wheel, you might have come across multiple questions, right? Almost in every year's assignment, there is at least one question from this inquiry wheel, right? So what is this inquiry wheel? It is basically a circle of life for researchers, right? So what it says is that asking questions is the core of the inquiry wheel, right? Along with asking questions, there are multiple other things you need to do, right? One is that you need to constantly make observations, right? If you are studying, on a particular topic, there are multiple, papers you will come across, multiple research works you will come across. Um, so even apart from what they have, said themselves, you should always be have that keen eye that you are looking at the data and you are and because you are looking at multiple studies simultaneously, you are able to identify, okay, this person had said this and this person had said this. I think there is a link between this thing and this thing, right? So that kind of keen observation should be there, right? So once you observe, you ask questions. Is this going to be the case? Is it going to be true? Right? Based on these questions, you define a problem, right? If this is the case, I think that this will be linked to this particular thing, right? After you define a problem, you need to again ask questions and then you need to, define objectives or form the questions, the exact question what you want to work on, right? That is basically like objective. So I have decided based on this literature survey that I have done, I have defined a problem that this is the gap that is remaining, and I think that there is a way to fulfill this gap, right? In and that way, I have to, devise. So in that, I need to formulate some objectives that this is what first I'm going to establish a link between the two. Then I'm going to check this particular factor in A and in B. Then I'm going to check if I remove this factor, whether there is a difference in A and in B, something like that. So I will define my objectives, right? Then again, after defining my objectives, I need to investigate what is already known, right? So whatever was reported in the study A, I need to verify also whether that was true, right? Whatever was reported in study B, I need to again verify whether that was true or whether that is true for me right now, right? Then again, I will ask questions and then I will articulate the expectation. So I need to articulate that what is expected outcome, right? So if I do this, I think this is what will be the outcome, right? First, I will have to, think of what possible outcome I can get, right? Then I will actually carry out the study, right? After I carry out the study, again, I need to interpret the results, right? Then I will look at the observations. I will actually interpret what the observation means, whether then I'll question whether it is aligning with what was expected or whether it is completely different, right? Then I can reflect on the findings uh, again, after I reflect on the findings, I will obviously compile it. I will send it to somebody, but that person might question, right? Okay, I think this needs to be done. I think this needs to be done. I think this part also needs to be added, right? Eventually, when that part is compiled by me and by suppose my guide or my peers, then we come to communicating these findings, right? So this communication might be to the scientific society in general or the scientific community through research papers, through seminars, etc., right? And thereafter, once it is communicated, other people can further read it, right? Once they also read it, now they can also, make their own observations out of our study, and then the circle starts again, right? So that is basically the inquiry wheel. Then we did study two kinds of reasoning. One was inductive reasoning and the other was deductive reasoning, right? So just give me a small break. I'll just yes, thanks. Um, just a moment. I'll just layout I need to rectify. Okay. Yeah, so as I said, there are two kinds of reasoning that we have come across. One is the inductive reasoning and the other is the deductive reasoning, right? So in case of inductive reasoning, what happens is there is first a pattern that is observed, right? So you look at something, you observe a pattern, right? It might not be a very big data set also, right? Maybe you have just looked at two dogs in this particular society that I'm living in, and both the dogs were black, right? Based on that, somebody has thought that, okay, so this society has black dogs, right? And based on that, a hypothesis is formed, right? So based on the observation, a hypothesis is formed that okay, this kind of this society actually has black dogs only, right? And then we try to prove it into a theory, right? On the contrary, what happens in case of deductive reasoning, sorry, first let us also go through what is inductive reasoning. So these kinds of logical questions that come to us in our examinations, whenever you are giving any competitive exam, be it gate net, even jam, other civil examinations, these kind of logical reasoning comes, right? So the kind of reasoning that we do for this our mind does for this kind of questions is known as inductive reasoning. So I am seeing what is happening, and based on that I am predicting what is going to happen, right? That is what is inductive reasoning, right? That is the same case over here as well, right? So inductive reasoning is actually the process where a small observation is used to infer a larger theory without necessarily proving it, right? So there is no need to prove over here, right? Based on what is happening, I'm predicting what will happen, right? There is no proof that is asked of over here, right? So, what is the potential problem? Inductive leap is the potential problem with this kind of reasoning, right? So, that means that your generalization might not be correct every time, right? So, in this kind of logical, cues wherein we are answering these kind of questions, it is still okay. But if we make these kinds of generalizations in nature, or when we are talking about uh, things around us, it might not always be correct, right? Then we come to another kind of reasoning that is known as deductive reasoning, right? Over here, it goes in a different direction, right? So there is an existing theory, right? Based on that existing theory, I am formulating a hypothesis, right? So an existing theory is, for instance, that the protein accumulations are causing neurodegenerative disorders, right? And these protein accumulations are causing neurodegenerative disorders because neurons are non-dividing cells, and with age, because they are not even dividing, whatever is getting accumulated is more over here, right? So, for instance, if there was a dividing cell, there was some accumulation in this cell. Once it divided, maybe it got split into half, right? Again it divided, it got split into half, right? So the accumulation also gets split, right? So that is why it is not causing that much of a burden. But in case of a neuron, it is one cell, right? It is non-differentiating now. Now whatever is getting accumulated is progressively increasing over here, right? Because this cell cannot divide and dilute this particular accumulation that is causing some problem, or that could cause some problem, right? So for instance, that is the theory. Based on that, I come up with a hypothesis, that is, for instance, that if we could, initiate differentiation somehow over here, it might help loosen their burden, right? Or if we could, target the protein accumulation, maybe that could help relieve neurodegeneration by itself, right? Then after that, I do experiments, I make observations, and then I confirm whether this, whatever my hypothesis was correct or not, right? So these are the differences between inductive and deductive reasoning, right? So in inductive reasoning, there is an observation. Based on that, we formulate a pattern. Then we formulate a tentative hypothesis, which eventually becomes a theory for us, right? But in case of deductive reasoning, it is quite the opposite, right? So we start with a theory. Based on that, we formulate a hypothesis. We do experiments, we make our own observations and inferences, and based on that, we confirm whether what we are saying is true or not, right? Then again, there are three very, similar kind of terms in this regard, which are hypothesis, theory, and law. Right. So, what is the difference between all these three? Right. So, hypothesis basically has an explanation for is an explanation for an observed phenomena. Right. I'm observing something. I think that it is because of this particular thing. Right. Then we need to explain what you expect to happen. Right. If this is the case, if what I'm seeing is because of this thing, I think that if we modify this thing because of which that phenomena is happening, that phenomena will also change, right? Then this hypothesis is always testable and measurable, right? I can test my hypothesis. I can do experiments. I can do studies to find out whether what I'm saying is correct or not. Or it can also be proven wrong, right? Hence, we can have multiple hypotheses, right? Either this is the case or this is the case. I will test for both, and I will find that one of them might be true, one of them might not be true, right? Then what is a theory? Theory is a hypothesis that has stood time, right? So there is a prevailing hypothesis, right? That we know that that multiple people think that protein accumulation is causing neurodegeneration, right? So it is a hypothesis on which multiple different kinds of studies have been done, and there is multitude of evidence that supports this hypothesis, right? It might not necessarily prove it directly, but there is a multitude of evidence that is supporting this hypothesis, right? So it is basically theory, the hypothesis that has stood time. It is well substantiated explanation of some aspect of natural world, right? For instance, I'm saying, now why is it so that neurons are getting affected by protein accumulation? Why not other cells? Because neurons are non-dividing, right? They cannot dilute this away, right? Other dividing cells can dilute whatever is accumulated in them. Then theories have also have predictive capabilities that guide further investigation, right? That is how deductive reasoning works, right? We look at a theory, and based on that we predict something that might be the case, right? Then we test that. So it is an organized system of accepted knowledge that applies in a variety of circumstances to explain a specific set of phenomena or observation. Right? Then we come to law. What is a law? A natural law is described by a sequence of events in nature that has been observed to occur without variation under the same conditions, right? For instance, the sun, rising in the east, setting in the west, right? Or tides, right? These kinds of things, gravitational pull, right? All these are laws, right? They are not theories because it happens despite everything, anything, it will definitely happen, right? Then natural law is the basis of the experimental method in science and is dependent upon cause and effect, right? Then natural law predicts that something will happen under a certain set of circumstances, but it does not explain why it happens, right? So it might not be necessary that we can explain exactly why this particular thing is happening, right? But it will happen, right? So that is why it is a law. Okay. So it is another representation for this hypothesis versus theory versus law, right? Hypothesis would be a possible answer to a question, right? It could be true, it could not be true, right? What is a theory? It is a hypothesis that has been tested and supported many times. Theories serve as a basis for describing patterns that we observe in nature, right? So, once you have multiple studies that are done for it, you can just, yeah, you can call it a theory, right? Then law. Law is a general statement that describes some pattern in nature, right? The statement must hold true under the specified conditions without exception, right? So, gravity, for instance, that is being depicted in the hypothesis and theory section also, is not just a good idea or a theory, it is actually a law, right? It is always there, right? The gravitational pull at Earth on Earth is always at play, right? Then we can discuss another two, very um interchangeably used terms sometimes by people who don't exactly know what these terms are, which are discovery versus invention, right? Also, as kids, I think we would have been a little puzzled, sorry, as to what was discovery and what was invention, not intervention. So, the concept of discovery indicates the process of finding something that exists but that is not known or recognized yet, right? For instance, what could be an example of discovery? It could be basically finding a new species of butterfly, right? Finding a new kind of tree, right? Discovering an unknown lake, right? That existed at some place, but nobody has come across that lake, right? So it is nowhere in the geographical maps or anything. So finding out a lake. So all these things are discovery, right? Something that was already existing, already present in nature, but we never knew about it, right? That is what is discovery, right? Then the concept of invention, on the other hand, indicates process of devising something that does not exist, right? For instance, earlier weapons did not exist, right? So somebody invented weapons, right? Earlier wheels did not exist. Somebody in some of our ancestors, they invented the wheel, right? Similarly, light, electricity, etc., did not exist, right? Somebody invented that. So these are things that are not naturally occurring. It has been invented, right? So that is, it has been devised specially, right? So that is what is invention. Then we come across another term that is known as common sense, right? So again, in sir's lectures also we have discussed that common sense is something that is something that should be a reasoning that should come naturally to a person, right? So common sense is sound practical judgment concerning everyday matters, right? Or basic ability to perceive, understand, and judge that is shared by nearly all people. That is why it is known as common sense, right? For instance, after a certain age, right? A child might not know. But after a certain age, you know that if you go near fire, it will hurt you, right? Or if feel like uh, if you touch the hot pan bare hand, it will hurt you, right? So that is what is common sense, right? So these are some questions that that we might not actually, mm, what is the word that I'm looking for? We might not consciously think about all these questions in our head, but subconsciously also, in order to reach a common sense judgment, these are some questions that might go on in our head, right? Why does this happen? Then your answer about it. How does this happen? Then your expectations about how it might happen. Then we collect data or analyze it. Then what does this data mean? Then what it doesn't mean? All these parts are common sense, right? It is very similar to the models that we develop for research, right? Wherein we ask a research question, then we develop a theory, right? It might happen because of this particular thing. Then we identify at what places it could happen, right? I can say that this particular species can grow at one particular temperature, at this kind of habitat, etc., right? It is not applicable at any place, right? Maybe it can't grow near the equator, maybe it can't even survive if it is near the equator or near the Antarctic or Arctic, right? So then I need to identify a hypothesis, I test a hypothesis, then I evaluate the results, and then there is critical review that happens, once I submit my results to somebody, right? So it is very similar, common sense and research, right? How it is panned out, right? Now, what is research? It is defined as the creation of new knowledge, right? Or the use of existing knowledge in a new and creative way so as to generate new concepts, methodologies, and understandings, right? So, why is it saying either it is creation of new knowledge? For instance, invention of something is also kind of research, right? So that is creation of new knowledge, something that we did not know. Now we are creating something like that, right? So that is also research, and also using existing knowledge, right? Also something that we did not know could be that we have just found out that this particular drug, this particular compound can alleviate some of the arthritis symptoms, right? So that is also creation of new knowledge, right? What could be the use of existing knowledge? For instance, we know that there is a very prevalent drug known as metformin that is used by diabetic individuals, and it has prevailed in market for so long, right? And now we think that because it is targeting this particular pathway, and this particular pathway is also affected in maybe retinopathy or maybe neuro inflammation or neurodegeneration. I think if we can also use metformin because it can cross the blood-brain barrier also, and to treat this particular kind of neurodegeneration, so that neuroinflammation will go down, some symptoms will become better, right? So that is the use of existing knowledge in a new and creative way so as to generate new concepts, methodologies, and understanding, right? Then most research projects share the same general structure, which could be represented in the shape of an hourglass. So the hourglass notion of research says that we should always begin with broad questions, right? So something that everybody will understand, right? I can just not go and say that I want to work on this particular gene that is named as PRKN2, right? That I can't say, right? Most of the people will lose interest at that particular time itself, right? Or I can't just go and say that I want to work on a gene named APP, right? I need to first start at a broader level, right? Begin with broad questions, begin with what is already known, right? So, what I will say is that you might already know that neurodegeneration is rising in the world with rising average age and good medication that is being given, the because the average age of individuals has risen, the uh, uh, chances of neurodegeneration occurring has, or those kinds of disorders has also gone up, right? Because they usually used to occur at a later age, stage in life, right? Now because more people are attaining that stage, more of these disorders are also arising, right? One such disorder, which is actually the most widely occurring neurodegenerative disorder, is Alzheimer's disease, right? And you might have come across at least one individual in that you know of, maybe even distantly, who might be suffering from this particular disorder, right? Now, I will say that in this disorder, there are multiple genes that are implicated, right? So, one of the genes that is implicated along with the others is APP, right? Several other genes are presenilin-1, presenilin-2, etc., right? But one gene that I want to focus on over here is APP, right? So I'm narrowing down, right? Then I will operationalize, right? Why we are looking at this particular gene? Because in this particular population, it is very significantly found, right? And we are studying on this particular population. Then what do we observe? Like we will formulate some questions, we will do some research. Based on that, we will observe something, we will analyze the data, we will reach conclusions, and then after we have reached conclusions, we will say that okay, in case of APP, this is what we see. Now, because other kinds of Alzheimer's genes also follow similar kind of pathways to basically cause the disease. I think this can be extrapolated to other kinds of genes also. So, in general, in Alzheimer's disease, we can consider that this is a thing that is happening, and there are a lot of other diseases under this term neurodegenerative disorders that basically behave very similar to Alzheimer's. So it might be possible that similar kinds of mechanisms are at play over there as well, right? We will generalize back to a wider view. Right, so that is the general structure of research. It is kind of hourglass, right? You will start with a broader thing, you will narrow it down in the middle, then you'll extrapolate again, right? Also, this research structure helps us to create research that is, it should be quantifiable, right? Because these days that is a very hype thing. Earlier, there used to be research that even if you are showing two pictures that are drastically different, and you can convince somebody to publish that picture, but now you need to quantify the two pictures to tell them that okay, this much percentage difference is there, right? Why is that done? Because uh, in pictures that have very stark difference, you can still make it out, right? But there might be some things that we miss with the naked eye, right? Maybe the intensity was different, right? This was fluorescing with higher intensity, and this was fluorescing with lower intensity, right? So we are quantifying that, and that can help us, even observe very minute details. So that is why it should be quantifiable, it should be verifiable, right? Somebody who wants to, look at okay, the original raw files, or how you were doing your results, should be able to look at it, right? Then it should be replicable. So if you write down that this is what I have done, this is the strain I have used, these are the chemicals I have used, I incubated for this much time. This is the temperature I incubated in, and then I developed it, right? So if somebody else who is using exactly the same things should also be able to replicate your result, right? So research should definitely be replicable, and it should also be defensible, right? So you should be able to defend your research, right? Whatever outcome is coming, you need to think about why that is coming, right? And if at all you that uh, you know um, argument itself is not enough. You need to just not know why that is coming. You also need to, maybe sometimes do additional experiments to prove that what you are thinking about why this is happening is also correct, right? Or it is not correct. So you might have to look in another direction. So, this is similar to what we have already seen, that there is an existing theory. Based on that, there is hypothesis generation. After hypothesis is generated, the research is designed, then there is sampling and measurement. Data is collected, then there is analysis, and analysis that is done. After which, again, this analysis is verified and it is eventually presented, it is published, it is communicated, and again, it adds on something to an existing theory, and based on that, again, hypothesis, the same loop can go on. Right? We all have already discussed the hourglass model of research, right? Now we come to hypothesis, right? So from here we will begin about how these different parts of a research paper will be composed, right? So I'll just okay. Yeah. Okay, did somebody, Bindeep, do you want to say something? Okay, just in case it is about the audio and video, I had actually turned it off. Um, yeah, I'll just stop sharing and share again. Yes. Hmm. So the hypothesis is basically a clear statement of what is intended to be investigated, right? So in hypothesis, we tell that this is what we want to investigate on. Also, it should be specified before research is conducted and openly stated in reporting the results, right? So why we should always have a hypothesis before we start experimenting? Because it should not be like there should be some direction or some rationale behind us conducting an experiment, right? It should not be like we are randomly doing something. We don't know what is going to be an outcome, just because somebody told us to do a Western blot with a particular protein, we did it, and based on whatever result we were getting, we now we are sitting and looking at what does this result mean? Why did we do this experiment? What does this protein have to do with this particular study? Right? That is not how it should work, right? It should be the other way around. First, you should research about it. You should have a question in mind. To solve that question, you should do your studies, right? So, if you have a hypothesis already in mind, it helps us to identify the research objectives, right? So, you need to know why, like, what is the kind of work you need to do over here, right? And then we can identify the key abstract concepts involved in the research. Also, we can identify its relationship to both the problem statement and the literature review, right? Also, a problem cannot be scientifically solved unless it is reduced to hypothesis form, right? So, that is another case. Also, hypothesis is a powerful tool of advancement of knowledge, consistent with existing knowledge and conducive to further inquiry, right? Also, the hypothesis can be tested. It is either verifiable or falsifiable. It can be correct. It can also be nullified, or it can be, proved wrong. Then hypotheses are not moral or ethical questions, right? It is not like, some moral question that um uh, kids should support their parents in old age. That is a moral or ethical of a moral or ethical value, right? It doesn't have anything to do with research per se, right? It is not a research question, right? It is more a societal question, or societal, how the society works, right? It is neither too specific nor too general. It is also a prediction of consequences, and it is considered valuable even if proven false. Right? So, if we evaluate the hypothesis, how does the scientific evaluation of this hypothesis look like, right? So, this is again one problem that Sir had discussed, that sometimes you might have come across these various kinds of, horoscopic views about how is your day going to be if you are, say, a Gemini, right? What is the kind of life partner you are going to get if you are a Taurus, right? These kinds of views, right? So, if it can be scientifically validated, then that could be a hypothesis that, yeah, I think that is true, right? But if it is not scientifically validated, then it is, we call it a hokum, right? So, over here, uh, in front of four different kinds of horoscopes, so sorry, this sun signs, are written some problems, right? Some medical conditions. So in Aries, it is written, these people generally might have headaches or tooth issues or jaw grinding or even facial blemishes, right? In Capricorn, it is written possible problems including arthritis, knee issues, osteoporosis. Right? Cancer, it is written, people might have indigestion, intestinal maladies, acid reflux disease, etc. And Libra, people might have excretory problems. Right? So for this, what Sir used to do in class was that you have a set in class, right? So you have students who are from different backgrounds, right? They have come from different parts of India, sometimes even abroad, and they are from different kinds of culture. They might speak different languages, the kind of food they eat is different, right? So, but the date of birth is not different across India, right? It is the calendar is the same, right? So he used to hand out, this thing about, like, what is the date of birth of your parents, what is your date of birth, what is the kind of disease conditions that they have or that you have, right? To test this particular kind of hypothesis, right? So can this be tested and developed as a hypothesis, right? So this is an example of such a questionnaire based survey in the classroom of 15 students, in which it is not generally a general scientific approach. It is just an example of whether that kind of hypothesis can be tested or not, right? So this is the outcome he got, right? So that people who were from this thing, who had birthdays in March had these kinds of problems. People who had birthdays in April had this kind of problem, right? But over here, the sample size is also small, right? It is just for 15 students. So it might be possible that there are no students who have a birthday in June. There is maybe only one student who has a birthday in Jan. That is why this kind of discrepancies coming, right? So even in these kinds of, it can be tested maybe research wise also, but your sample size has to be immensely large, right? So that you can correctly answer this kind of question, right? So in 15 people, I can't make out, right? There are 12 months, 15 people, right? You might not get somebody's birthday itself in June. It might be possible that nobody or nobody's parents was born in June out of those 15 people, right? So over here, right? November has people from Sagittarius and Scorpio, and March has people from Aries and Pisces, right? So a quick questionnaire-based survey in classroom of 15 students. Okay, just the same statement that is given, right? So based on the data, we can propose a hypothesis, right? That in case of osteoporosis cases, in case of uh, uh, in cases of osteoporosis, these are the average values of age, body weight, cholesterol, blood fasting, blood pressure, etc. that we get. And in case of healthy controls, this is the result that we get, right? Over here, we can see the sample size in osteoporosis cases is 80, out of which 24 are male and 56, which is maybe double of what is the male population, is the female, right? So it is almost a 2:1 ratio between female and male, right? Over here, however, in healthy controls, the number itself is more, that is 178. That is almost more than double of what we have in osteoporosis cases. Also, the male to female ratio is also almost 1:1, right? So that is why maybe these factors are different, right? Because over here, 1:1 ratio of males and females are being considered. That is why maybe it is said that monthly income to family is INR 25,000 something per month, and this is INR 40,000 something per month, right? Uh, so that just might be because more number of people are considered over here, right? Over here, the number of alcoholics is more. Over here, number of alcoholics is less, right? In healthy control, even smokers are more, while in this osteoporosis, smokers are less, right? So it doesn't mean that if you smoke more, you will not have osteoporosis, or if you drink more, you will not have osteoporosis, or if you work for a living, you will not have osteoporosis. That is not generally the case, right? So what is happening over here? It is basically because of a skewed data, because over here the number of females are more, right? So a lot of females in our society are housemakers, so that is why they are not working for a living, right? That is why this is like this, right? Because it is most of the females who are in this particular osteoporosis group. The number of the percentage of smokers and alcoholics is also lesser, right? Because again, that is a societal influence, right? So, out of this, if we want to propose a hypothesis based on this data, it could be higher the family income, higher the probability of getting osteoporosis. But that will not be a good kind of hypothesis, right? Even by looking at it, we can say that that is not a good rationale to come up with objectives to work on, right? Then those who work for a living or having a job are at lower risk of developing osteoporosis, is also what is said over here, right? Smokers and drinkers are at lower risk of developing osteoporosis, right? So if you thoroughly review this, as we said, the literature and a thorough analysis of the original data are essential prerequisites for developing a very good hypothesis, right? So they have highlighted the sample size, the male to female ratio, etc. over here. Then we come to structure of a research paper. So we have already understood what is a research hourglass model of research, right? This is also very similar to that. So the model of research and the model of how you are presenting your research is going to be similar, right? So this is also hourglass in shape. There is an abstract initially that encompasses, in very short, what is the area you are working on, what is your question, why is that your question, what have you done to answer that question, what is your finding, right? Everything in one short paragraph, 60 to 100 words, right? Or maybe a little longer than that. sometimes, right? uh, 60 to 100 is too less. Maybe up to 200 or to 300 words. That is it for abstract, right? First over here also we start with a broader, group, that is introduction. So it is a broader topic. It consists of why we are, what is the literature we are, that is known, what is the, overall area we are working on, what is already known in that area, what is not known in that area, etc., etc. Then we describe the methods, right? That this these are the objectives that I was going to do for this. These are the methods that I have used to fulfill my objectives, right? And then we look at results, which have basically the outcome of whatever experiment has been done, right? So whatever methods we have listed, whatever outcome has come out of that method will come in this result section, right? So we will write all the observations, whatever outcome we have gotten over here, and then we will discuss that, okay, this, we think that these observations are linked together, will, prove this point. This observation supports this particular idea very thoroughly, etc., etc. We will also, again extrapolate it to different kinds of diseases, similar kinds of studies that are already done, etc. So it will again be an hourglass, the bottom end or wider end of the hourglass again, right? So when we are structuring a research paper, we have to have some kind of a story or some kind of a narration while writing also, right? So for this cohesive writing or good narration during writing, there are some points we need to keep in mind, right? The first point is that first we should always uh, talk about the given and then we should talk about the new, right? What does this mean? That I can't come and say to you that, for instance, I am introducing you to a friend of mine that you have never met. I will just bring that person and say, this is Ajitesh, right? That is not how it is going to work, right? So I will give you some background about the person, right? So I will probably say a good way of introducing something is that I will say, do you remember that there was a friend that I talked about? This particular friend is from my master's group, right? You do know this other friend who is Nisha, right? It is a mutual friend of that. So this is that person. His name is Ajitesh, right? That is how I am going to introduce somebody. I'm going to give something given, right? You remember there is a friend that I used to talk about, right? Something that you already know, right? Although you don't know the friend, you have not met the friend, right? Then I will say, okay, this is that friend, and the name of this friend is Ajitesh, right? So, first you will always start with something given and then you will come to new, right? That is how good narration is built, right? Then we will create focus and eventually move on to topical progression, right? So what does that mean is, if for instance I wanted to talk about triple negative breast cancer, right? If I start talking about triple negative breast cancer, as soon as I reach an audience, do you think I will be able to captivate them in to the talk or into listening what I'm saying? No. So first I have to, draw their focus. Do you know how many women around us are suffering from this particular disease? Do you know the outcome of this disease? Do you know the severity that this disease has? Do you know how much it can affect our lives? And do you know the mortality rate because of this disease? You know, after this, once I have, posed these questions and answered these questions, now people are engaged into the discussion, right? Now I will say, out of all of the kinds of breast cancer, there is this one particular kind which is known as triple negative, right? It is very, very hard to diagnose. You know why it is very hard to diagnose? Because of this particular reason. Also, because of the same reason, it is very, very difficult for us to devise a treatment strategy for this, right? So now, if I would have started with this initially, you would have lost interest, right? Now I have told you something, some few facts I have thrown your way that will help me captivate your interest into the topic, right? And then eventually I will proceed to, more and more and more detail, right? If I start with detail, you will never be interested in that topic. I have to start with something very general, something that will engage the audience, and then only I can proceed into details of what I am going to say. Again, this is the same thing, light and heavy, right? We should always go from light to heavy. So it is, even if I take the same example, right? I need to start with, the population of India, how many people in India are suffering from cancer. The if we divide the cancer into the male, specific cancer and female specific cancer, these many, in case of females, this is the most prevalent kind of cancer, is the breast cancer, right? You know how many deaths we have in a year, right? So I will start with the light concept and eventually I will move on to which is the gene that is implicated. What do I intend to do with that gene? How I'm planning to devise a therapeutic strategy for that, etc. Right? So, again, there are two texts that were given over here for the given and new principle, right? We can just read it very, very quickly over here. So, text A has this number of statements which says, application of science to the creation of useful devices to meet the needs of society is called mechanical engineering. The design, manufacture, operation, and maintenance of wide variety of machinery are the focus of mechanical engineers' work. Jet engines and minute instruments for use in medicine are amongst the products designed by mechanical engineers. The engineering drawings of devices which are to be produced are created by mechanical engineers. Manual work was the normal means of creating drawings before the late 20th century. But computer-aided design programs have been able to create drawings and designs since the use of computer became widespread. Three-dimensional models can be used directly for manufacturing the device thanks to the modern CAD programs, right? So over here we have started with what is mechanical engineering, what is the role of mechanical engineers per se, what is the kind of things that they normally devise for that. What they need is the kind engineering drawings. Earlier these kinds of drawings were done by hand manually, and now we have newer kind of technology which is known as computer aided design, which can help with this kind of drawing, right? This is what we have understood over here. And this is a flow in which we have understood this. In text B, what it says is mechanical engineering is the application of science to the creation of useful devices to meet the needs of the society. Mechanical engineers focus on the design, manufacture, operation, and maintenance of a wide variety of machinery. The products of their work range from jet engines to minute instruments for use in medicine. Mechanical engineers usually create engineering drawings of the devices which are to be produced. Before the late 20th century, drawings were usually made manually, but widespread use of computers has now enabled creation of drawings and designs using computer-aided design programs. Modern CAD programs allow engineers to produce three-dimensional models which can be used directly in the manufacture of these devices depicted, right? So over here you can see that the flow was much better, right? Whatever was unnecessary was not included. There was lesser statements that did not make sense in the middle, right? The flow was much better. And you can see because of those unnecessary words being omitted, the overall, uh, you know, a portion that is being occupied by this text is also small, right? So that is what first we need to really look at the flow. So the knowledge that we got out of both was same, right? But over here in text A, the sentences were more discontinuous, right? Over here, the continuity was very nice, right? So, for creating focus, like I said, first you need to captivate focus and then you can build upon that, right? So, we need to look at two things at the topic and comment. They are very closely connected to the concept of given and new information. These concepts will be helpful to us in the rest of this module. This is from Sir's slide. And more precisely, we can define topic and comment as follows. So, comment is what is being said about the matter or idea currently being discussed, but comment is normally found towards the end of the sentence or clause, right? It usually provides the reader with new information related to the topic or information that otherwise needs to be brought to the reader's attention, right? So first, we will discuss about the topic, and only after that we will comment on that topic, right? It is not like we are beginning with a comment and then we are saying that, oh, I was commenting about this particular topic. No, that is not what it is, right? Then light before heavy principle. Now, this is a very, very good and, very, very representative, easily representative example for light before heavy, right? So these are three tables that are telling the same thing, right? Same exact information they are giving, right? Version 1 is looking like this. Version 2 has one time and one temperature table, and version 3 has one temperature and one time table, right? Now, which one looks easier to look at, right? I think version 2 looks easier to look at, right? So version 1 is difficult to quickly find information in, right? It is very, very, busy over here. Version 2, after 6 minutes, the temperature had risen to 29 degrees Celsius, right? It is easy to find over here. In version 3, what is the information we are getting at 29 degrees Celsius? The time was 6 minutes, right? That is not how we normally progress or frame our sentences, right? We say that, yeah, the egg will boil in around 6 minutes, right? I will not say, or I will say that in 5 minutes, this water bath can attain 100 degrees Celsius. I will not say that 100 degrees Celsius is attained by this water bath after around 5 minutes, right? So the first one is what we generally use, right? So we generally always have this, uh, uh, you know, uh, like how we give dates, right? We generally always talk about time first and then what is happening in that much time. So the light before heavy principle. Then we come to abstract. So what is abstract? We saw that in that hourglass, it was on top. Before introduction, it was actually out of the hourglass. So it is actually a summary of the contents of a book, article, or speech, right? So it is summary, meaning it will tell you what is the topic we are talking about, what is the subtopic that we are talking about, what is the question we have, what is already known about that topic, what is the question we have apart from what is known, what is the major thing that we have done to answer that question, and what is the 1 or 2 line outcome of what we have done, right? So how do we write an abstract? Abstract is like a TV commercial, right? This is a very nice analogy. It is like a TV commercial. Whether the reader would read the entire report or not depends on the interest you create in the on the topic of interest in the abstract itself, right? So if I'm interested, I might go and read the entire thing also. So in abstract, one sentence we need to in one sentence we need to give an introduction, that is where we need to tell what the topic is. Then we need to state the problem that we want to tackle. Then we want to summarize in one sentence why nobody else has adequately answered this particular research question yet. Then we want to explain in one sentence how we have tackled the research question. Then in another sentence, we want to tell how do you go about doing research that follows from your big idea. And then finally, we will say as a single sentence, what is the key impact of your research? Sorry. So this is what the abstract looks like, right? So it has different compartments. First, you need to tell what is the known and the unknown. Then we need to define what we need, right? What do we already have and what we want out of the study, right? Then we need to tell what is going to be the task, right? What is the thing that we are going to do in order to achieve what we want out of the study, and then uh, we will give the one line outcome of the study, right? So this is a smaller abstract. This we can read. So first, in black is the background information which says many plants in Australia have their seeds buried in order for the species to survive fires. The seeds start to germinate under soil at certain temperatures. Okay. So then we give the outline of what was investigated in the experiment. So the seeds of Acacia terminalis and Delvenia floribunda were examined in this particular experiment, right? So we are saying that we have already given background information. Now we have narrowed down to two seeds that we want to look at. Then we tell our hypothesis. It was hypothesized that the seeds need heat for germination to start, right? Then we give the summary of what is the method we have used to, answer this question, which is seeds of the two species were treated in hot and cold water and left to start germinating. Then we describe the results very briefly. That Acacia terminalis showed a significant response in germination after the hot water treatment, while Dilvenia floribunda did not. Neither seeds showed the response in germination after cold water treatment, right? So, with respect to hot water, they did show some responses, especially Acacia terminalis, but to cold water treatment, none of them showed any response. Then we will summarize whatever our result is, right? So, the result for Dilvinia floribunda was unexpected, but may be explained by factors such as water temperature and length of time the seed remained in heated water, right? So that is what is the essence of an abstract, right? Then when we talk about readership of a paper, right? So the entire paper will be read by only people who are, doing research in very similar field to what you are doing, right? So less than 5% you can say is the readership of the entire paper, right? But abstract is read by most people, right? Still it is only going to be about 20% because people are already going to filter out whether they want to read your abstract or not based on the title of the paper, right? So title of the paper is the only thing that has 100% visibility, right? People are going to filter at that point itself. The second filtration will go on in the abstract, right? So good title brings visibility to the paper because it has 100% readership, right? A title of your manuscript is usually the first introduction that readers and reviewers to uh, have to your work, right? Therefore, you must select a title that grabs attention. It should accurately describe the contents of your manuscript and the people, and it makes people to want to read your work further, right? Which is an effective title? An effective title should actually convey the main topics of the study. It should highlight the importance of the research. It should be concise. Also, it should attract readers, right? So these are some key points you need to remember while you are making a title, right? We will also talk about keywords and how they should not interfere with what is already given in the title, right? So creating a title, how do you create a title? We need to ask these questions to ourselves and make note of the answers, right? So what is my paper about? My paper studies whether X therapy improves the cognitive function of patients suffering from dementia. What is the technique that I have used? It was a randomized trial, right? Who or what is studied? I studied 40 cases from 6 cities in Japan, right? So based on this, I will formulate some keywords, right? So keywords will be X therapy, randomized trial, dementia, cognitive function, cities in Japan, 40 cases, right, etc. So, these could be the possible titles, right? So, one title could be This study is a randomized trial that investigates whether X therapy improved cognitive function in 40 dementia patients from 6 cities in Japan. It reports improved cognitive function. Now, this looks like a statement or an introduction or actually a conclusion statement, right? That is not what we want to do. It is a very, very long title, and people will probably not go through the entire title, right? They will not have that much patience. They might miss some things also, right? So we will delete all the unnecessary or repetitive words and we will link the remaining words, right? Which will help us reduce the length of our title and it is now a better length, right? Randomized trial of X therapy for improving cognitive function in 40 dementia patients from 6 cities in Japan, right? Out of this also we can delete the non-essential information and reword the title, which will further be of a good length, which is randomized trial of X therapy for improving cognitive function in 40 dementia patients, right? Now we can write from Japan also. We don't need to write from 6 cities in Japan, right? And we can also include a subtitle, right? So a colon and a subtitle. So X therapy improves cognitive function in 40 dementia patients. It and randomized trial, right? After this we need to study about keywords, right? Once we study about keywords also we will further understand how to actually formulate a good title and a paper and good keywords so that a paper can come up in the correct kind of searches, right? So we'll come across that also. Just give me a moment. So we talk about keywords now, right? So keywords are important words or concepts that are found in your research paper or thesis. It is an easy way to choose the most important nouns. All other words will be relevant, right? A um, uh, and uh, a lot of other unnecessary words, they are all going to be irrelevant, right? Keywords are used by search engines to list paper of interest to you, right? So, for instance, if we are doing a Google search also, right? Yeah, Google is a search engine, right? So, if we are doing some kind of search, we want to search for some paper that talks about neurodegeneration in retina, right? So, I will probably write retina neurodegeneration. I will also write mouse or human, right? So the keyword should be such that it will give me the paper that I want, right? If that paper, if for instance there was a paper which has looked at the retinal degeneration in a neurodegenerative model, but they have not listed it as keywords, right? They have not listed retina as keyword. Only neurodegeneration they have listed as keyword, right? Then that is going to be a very, very, sad thing because that paper will never show up whenever I search for that kind of a study, right? And I can't know, like from lakhs of paper that exist, that that is one paper that exists, but it is not showing up, right? Yeah. So, for instance, this is a manuscript title which says region-specific neuronal degeneration after ocadic acid administration, right? So the poor keywords for this would be neuron, brain, uh, oxalic acid, region-specific neuronal degeneration or signaling. Why would these be poor keywords? Because it is already a lot of these are already given in the title, right? We want to include keywords which are not already given in the title because whenever a search engine is searching, it will go through whatever words are given in the title plus the keywords that we give, right? So the keywords, if they are different, it will, even we can give a total of maybe 15 words out of which any word that is searched will give our paper, right? But if it is the same, maybe we can have only 8 words, out of which if any of these 8 words is, searched for, will our paper be shown to that particular person, right? What will be the better keywords for this? Neurodegenerative diseases, right? CA1 region because this particular administration might have been occurring in a particular CA1 region of the hippocampus, hippocampal oxalic acid. Oxalic acid again is reiteration of what is already given, right? So, but it should not be in an abbreviation is what is shown over here. It even if it is given, it should be given in whole, as a whole, oxalic acid, neurotoxins, MAP kinase signaling system. Because over here it is written, signaling was not written, but over here MAP kinase signaling, cell death, etc. Right? So they should be different from the title and they should not have, abbreviations in them. Then what will be the correct order of writing a research paper, right? So, although this is the order in which we see a research paper, right? First, we look at a title, then abstract, not as seen, but how it is written, how it is presented is title, abstract, introduction, method, results, discussion, right? But that is not necessarily how we write a research paper, right? Because first, it is easier to write the methods, right? That is why we write the methods first because this is something that we already have on paper, right? We just need to paraphrase it and write it down. Results also, we already have a set of have done a set of experiments. We have a set of results. We just need to report, list them or compile them together, right? So this is the order that we follow. First, we write the methods, then results, then introduction, then discussion, then abstract, and then finally we write the title, right? Uh, because abstract is like a summary of the entire paper and title is like the one line summary of the entire paper, right? So if we discuss about order of writing a research paper, we need to create regular time blocks for writing as appointments in your calendar and keep these appointments, right? We need to create a detailed outline and discuss it with our mentor and peers. Then, what will this outline tell? It will basically tell the flow of the paper, okay? Whether I should begin in this way, wherein I talk about the brain first and then I talk about the spinal cord and this, or whether I should begin the other way around, wherein first I'm talking about the spinal cord, then I'm going into this particular part of the study, which is talking about the brain, right? That you need to chalk out once, right? Then we need to be meticulous and accurate in describing materials and methods, right? Why we need to be meticulous in this is so that the replicability is maintained, right? So that if anybody wants to try this kind of experiment again, they can try by following whatever you have done, right? So we need to disclose that nicely. Then we should be clear and concise and objective in describing our results. Also, we should interest our reader in introduction section by signaling all its elements and stating the novelty of the work. We should present the principles, relationships, and generalizations in a concise and convincing tone. Also, we can revise our paper through critical reading, receive feedback, and revise again, right? There's no harm in that. Then we talk about methods. So since we are saying this is the first section that we write, let us discuss the section a little, right? So the method section describes actions to be taken to investigate a research problem and the rationale for the application of specific procedures or techniques used to identify, select, process, and analyze information applied to understanding the problem, thereby allowing reader to critically evaluate a study's overall validity and reliability. right? So the methodology section of research paper answers two major questions. One is how the data was collected or generated. People can know that, right? And how it was analyzed. So you have a, separate subheading for statistical analysis. What is the test that you have used to analyze this particular data? What is the number of animals you have taken? What is the number of animals you have considered, etc. Right? So why is this method section required? We have already talked about it before. The experiment, it is mostly required because the experiment that we are showing could be repeated by others to evaluate whether the results are reproducible. Also, the audience can judge whether the results and conclusions are valid, right? So, if, for instance, I was looking at the data and I saw that in the method section they have disclosed that this data was repeated twice in two animals, right? And I know that for significance, generally in terms of biology, we take at least three animals, if not more than that, right? So I will say that in two animals, they have shown this. They have disclosed that they have shown it in two animals. So they are all right. There might have been some problem due to which only two they could show. But to me, it will still feel like, okay, they are showing this result, but I am not entirely convinced by it because it could just be a chance event that these two were showing this particular thing, right? So I might not be convinced particularly. I might not find their conclusions to be valid, right? Then how do we write the method section, right? So we describe the materials that we have used in the study, be it the different chemicals, different kinds of softwares, etc., instruments, right? Then we explain how the materials were prepared, right? If we are using a buffer, a pre-made buffer, we will just give the catalog number and the company. If we have prepared that buffer, we might give that, okay, we have used this much percentage of this much percentage of this in this particular buffer, right? Then we will describe the research protocol. We will explain how measurements were made and what calculations were performed, and we will state which statistical tests were done to analyze the data, right? Also, materials and methods section is in the research is the only section in research paper in which passive voice predominantly overrides the use of active voice. So I will not say over here that I after this I have done this. After this, this was like we did this. No, we will write it in a passive voice. We will say that the blocks were prepared. After that, the blocks were sectioned. 10 micron sections were taken, right? I will not say I prepared the blocks. After that, I have taken the sections. The sections that I have taken were 10. No, so it will always be in the passive voice, right? And then we write the result section, right? So how do we write the result section? In the result section, we simply state what we have found, but we will not interpret the results or discuss their implications, right? There is a separate section for that, that is known as discussion. As in materials and methods section, we use subheadings to separate the results of different experiments, right? So there will be multiple subheadings in our result section. Then results should be presented in a logical order. In general, this will be order of importance, not necessarily the order in which the experiments were performed, right? So it might be possible that while we were performing experiment, we had something else in mind. We did one experiment and then we found an outcome and we thought that since this is happening, I think we should check for this as well, right? And we did another experiment later on, which made more sense, when we formed a story, it made more sense to be put at first, right? So we will put that at first. We will not put it in the order in which it was performed. We will put it in a order in which it makes more sense, most sense, right? We will use past tense to describe our results, however, refer to figures and tables in the present tense. In the present tense, right? So in the text, we will write, we have done this, and after this, like we have taken this sample and we have also processed it for this, and this has been done, right? But in the table, we will say that figure 1 represents a bar diagram showing the treatment and control between these groups. So it will be in present tense, right? We will not duplicate the data among figures, tables, and texts, right? If we have already given something in text, we will not make a table for it. If we have already given that thing in table, we will not write about it again, right? We will just say that table one represents this, or this detail is given in this particular table. A common mistake is to restate much of the data from a table in the text of the manuscript. Instead, use the text to summarize what the reader will find in the table, or mention one or two most important data points. It is much easier to read the data in a table than in the text, right? Also, we need to include the results of statistical analysis in text, usually by providing p-values wherever statistically significant differences are described, right? So p values are like probability values, that whether what we are seeing is because of probability or chance event, or whether it is significantly uh, true that this is what we are seeing because of this particular thing, right? Then results should include an introductory context for understanding the results by restating the research problem underpinning your study. It should have inclusion of non-textual elements such as figures, charts, photos, maps, tables, etc. to further illustrate key findings if appropriate. Also, there should be systematic differences of description of your result, highlighting for the reader observations that are most relevant to the topic under investigation. The page length of results section is guided by the amount and type of data that is to be reported, and short paragraph that concludes the results section by synthesizing the key findings of the research should also be present, right? After results, before starting the discussion, there is a short summary paragraph that this is what we have seen in this results section, right? Then non-textual elements, right? Each non-textual element must have a caption consisting of a number and title, right? The number of figures, tables, graphs, etc. in the text should explicitly reference the item. If the non-textual element within the text is not adapted from another source but totally your own creation, we should say so. Otherwise, you must cite where you found the original one. Some of the non-textual element may be copyright protected. You might want to get a permission for its usage, right? Uh, what they are saying is, for instance, I have shown something in the first set of figures, right? I have shown a bar graph. When I'm writing a text, I will say that figure 1C, that is C number graph, it represents this, right? I will always, catalog it nicely also. Then we should first check out what the target journal has to say on the issue, right? In non-textual elements, how many figures can be included in a paper, right? That will vary from journal to journal. Some journals limit the number of tables and figures, and also has specific guidelines on design aspects of these display items, right? They should not cover more than this one space, right? It should have not more than four graphs. It should not have more than five image panels, something like that, right? Next, we decide whether to use tables and figures or text to put across key information. After you have decided to use a display item, choose the display item that best fits your purpose based on what you wish readers to focus on and what you want to present. The figures and tables or the display items are often the quickest way to communicate large amounts of complex information that would be complicated to explain in the text, right? So when we talk about tables, when do we use tables? When we have to show many and precise numerical values and other specific data in small space. Whenever we want to compare and contrast data values or characteristics among related items or items with several shared characteristics or variables, or to show presence or absence of specific characteristics, right? So, for instance, in that example that we were taking, osteoporosis and the control, a healthy control, in that also you could have seen that there was a table that was given, right? Because it had a lot of contents that were there. If we would write all those contents in a paragraph, it would take two paragraphs, and people will not be able to follow it very nicely also, right? When we talk about figures, why do we use figures? To show trends, patterns, and relationship across and between data sets when the general pattern is more important than the exact data values, right? Such as graphs and data plots. Also, we use it to summarize research results, right? Again, it could be pie charts, data plots, graphs, etc. Then also to present a visual explanation of sequence of events, procedures, geographic features, or physical characteristics such as thematic diagrams, images, photographs, maps, etc. Right? For images, whenever we are using images like microscopic images, some other, camera images, we should always include scale bars, right? So why are scale bars that important? Because it will help the reader know that how big is the thing that we are seeing over here, right? We should also always consider labeling important items. We should always indicate the meaning of different colors and symbols that are used, right? Whenever we are going for data plots, for graphs, etc., we should always label all axes, x-axis, y-axis, everything should be labeled. We should specify units for quantities, right? So we should write that in x-axis, time in minutes is being considered, or time in hour is being considered, or second, whatever, right? In y-axis, it is units in centimeter, or arbitrary units, right? We don't know the units, right? Like that. We should also specify units for quantities. Then we should label all curves and data sets and use a legible font size. It should always be legible to the reader. They should be able to look at it and understand what is written, right? We should also always use the same font type and size for figures, right? So otherwise, it is not very good practice if you are always changing the font and the size, right? Then there are some ethics in image processing which we need to keep in mind while we are publishing, right? So whenever we talk about a figure, it must maintain its original proportions, right? If it was in this proportion, it should always maintain its proportion, right? If we want to resize the image, we will not drag it sideways or top to bottom, right? If we do that, it will change the proportion of the image, right? When resizing an image, make sure to change the height and width by the same percentage, right? So we, from the side, like we drag and we pull. That is how we maintain proportion, right? We cannot horizontally or vertically adjust this image to resize it, right? That is not the correct way for representation. Also, when we are showing an image, there should be no specific feature within an image which should be enhanced, obscured, moved, removed, or introduced, right? So that means that if there are two images, I can enhance the contrast in general for both the images by an equal value, right? I should not mark a particular area and specifically enhance that area, right? That is image manipulation, right? The other one is just for representation, that you want to show in a good brightness and equal brightness between both of them, that okay, this is what we are seeing, right? But like for instance, this is also image manipulation where you have removed some particular part of the area, right? So then it cannot be quantified nicely. Or over here you are hiding something that might be relevant, right? Also, if the lanes of gels are spliced together, then it must be separated by thin black line, and the legend must note that the lanes were run on the same gel but were non-contiguous, right? So a line should be inserted over here in such a case. Also, if multiple stained cells are composited into a single frame, a border must be drawn around the cell that was not originally included in the field of view, right? For instance, these are the cells, and then another I am including over here. So I need to tell that this is a different picture. So I will include a border over here, right? Like this is a lot of information, right? If I start writing about it, I can write one entire page about the TCA, the citric acid cycle, right? So we should, wherever it is necessary and wherever it is possible, we should always convey information through schematics, right? As is shown over here. Then we talk about the introduction section, right? Said that we write the methods, then we write the results, then we write the introduction, right? So in introduction, we should provide readers with the background information that is needed to understand your study and the reason why we have conducted our experiments, right? So the introduction should answer the question, what is the question or problem that was studied, right? And why it is being studied, right? So while we are writing a background, we have to make sure that we are including the correct citations, right? The correct references. And for these citations, they should be well balanced. That is, if experiments have found conflicting results on the question that we are asking, we should cite both kinds of studies, right? Also, it should not be very outdated, right? Every field is different, but you should aim to cite references that are not more than 10 years old if possible. Although, be sure to cite the first discovery or mention in literature, even if it is older than 10 years. Like, for example, I'm studying a disease and a particular disease gene. I will obviously mention the person who has first found that disease gene, even if it is like 40 years old, right? Because I am studying that gene because it has been found 40 years ago, right? That I'm going to include. Apart from that, other citations that I'm including should be newer ones, right? Not very old. And then the citation should also be relevant, right? This is the most important requirement. The study site you cite should be strongly related to your research, right? It should not be that I have another study which I want to gain a citation on that study. So even though this particular study is unrelated to that study that I had done, I will still cite myself. No, that is not the correct practice, right? Then, if you look at the introduction section, you will see that uh, it, like it is very analogous to the postal address that you give when you are parceling something, right? So, for instance, we need to define the area of study, then we need to give the general statement and the specifics, and then finally we will narrow down to the name that is being investigated. Similarly, say you are sending a parcel to New Zealand, right? So will you write with who you are sending the parcel to and what is the house number for that person? No, first thing that you need to fill in a form that you are sending to New Zealand is which country you are sending it. In India, it would still have been possible, right? This other way around. But if you are sending it somewhere else, the person first needs to know where it is being sent, right? So another country, New Zealand, right? Which state in New Zealand you need to mention, which district, which town, which street, then which house number, and who is the person in that house that we need to give it to, right? So in the introduction section, we have to establish an area to research by. We have to identify a research niche, and we need to place our research within the research niche, right? So to establish an area, we need to highlight importance of the topic and make general statements about the topic and present an overview on current research on the subject. Later, to identify a research niche, we need to oppose existing assumption. We need to reveal a gap in existing research. We need to formulate a research question or problem, and we need to continue disciplinary tradition, right? Then, in order to place whatever you are thinking your research is going to be into that research niche, you need to state the intent of your study, outline the key characteristics of your study, describe important results, and give brief overview of the structure of the paper, right? Then, after the introduction, also we come to the discussion section, right? After this, there is just one other section that is remaining, which is the abstract and eventually the title. We have briefly already discussed about that, right? So in the discussion section, the purpose of the discussion section is to place your findings in the research context and to explain the meaning of the findings and why they are important without appearing arrogant, condescending, or patronizing, right? So, what goes on in the discussion section? The first thing that we have to do is state the study's major findings, right? We have to state the major findings. We need to explain the meaning and importance of the findings and consider alternative explanations for of the finding. Right. So whatever possible explanations you can give, you need to parallelly explain all of them. Right. Then we need to look at the research context, right? We need to compare and contrast whatever we have found with those of other published results, right? Also, you need to explain any discrepancies and unexpected findings. So, if there was something that is very unexpected outcome, it is a an outcome that you would not have foreseen, or whatever you had given in the introduction also would like you would not have been, or even the reader would not have been expecting that outcome, right? That you need to highlight, right? And you also need to state the limitations, weaknesses, and assumptions of your study, right? Then you need to close your paper with summarizing the answers to the research questions that you had posed. And you also need to indicate the importance of your work by stating applications, recommendations, and implications of the work that has been done, right? And then we come to acknowledgements, right? So in acknowledgement sections, we thank all of the people who have helped with the research but did not qualify for authorship, those who provided intellectual assistance, technical help, or special equipment or materials, the funding bodies for the research grants, if that is applicable, right? Also, in references, we should also include like references that are related to the people or work that helped us establish the origin of the ideas, the work that helped us justify our results or justify our claims, works that provide a context for your work and show there is interest in your field of research, right? For instance, in the introduction, you will show, right, that this is a kind of thing or research that is already going on. There is a lot of prevailing research, right? People are trying to find this also and this aspect also. This is the aspect that I think nobody else is looking on, and I want to work on this, right? Never cite a publication based on what you have read in a different publication, such as a review, right? We should always go and, read that particular paper that we are citing, right? We should not cite it based on something that was written about that work in another paper, right? Or based on the publication's abstract, right? Only on the abstract also we cannot cite, because we need to know that whatever they are stating in the abstract, they have conclusively proven in their work, right? They are not just, extrapolating to another level in their abstract. These may mislead you and the readers. Read the publication itself before you cite it, and then check the accuracy of the citation again before submitting your manuscript, right? Then, when we discuss about how we write a research paper, right? There are some other, when we are done with the parts, so different parts, how we are writing it, right? We have discussed about methods, then results, then introduction, then discussion, after which abstract and title is also written, which we have discussed earlier itself. So after all these individual parts are done, we also need to revise or edit the manuscript draft, right? So despite this is what this particular paper says, right, which was published in 2011. It says that despite your attempts to present your ideas in a logical and comprehensive way, the first drafts are frequently a mess. Use the advice of Paul Sylvia, Your first drafts should sound like they were hastily translated from Icelandic by a non-native speaker, right? The degree of your success will depend not on how your first draft looks, but on how you are able to revise and edit your paper after that, right? So the revision can be done at a macro structure and microstructure levels, right? What is macro structure revision? It includes the revision of organization, content, and flow of the paper. The microstructure level includes individual words, sentence structure, grammar, punctuation, and spelling, right? So the final strategy is working with a hard copy and pencil. Print a double space copy with font size 14 and reread your paper in several steps. Try reading your paper line by line with the rest of the text covered with a piece of paper. You are forced when you are forced to see only a small portion of your writing, you are less likely to get distracted and more likely to notice problems, right? You will end up spotting more unnecessary words and wrongly worded phrases or unparalleled constructions, right? After that, when you finally submit, right, it is what is the ultimate outcome of all the research, right? So it is late at night, you are still in lab, you're finishing revisions, getting ready to submit your paper, you feel happy, you have finally finished a year's worth of work, sometimes much more than that. You will submit your paper tomorrow, and regardless of the outcome, you know that you can do it, right? If one journal does not take your paper, you will take advantage of the feedback and resubmit again, right? You will have a publication, and this is the most important achievement, right? Specifically in research. Then there is a schematic that talks about the peer review process in which once we submit an article, it is assessed first by the editor, right? Then it is either rejected at that particular point or it is sent to the reviewers, right? Once it is sent to the reviewers, it is assessed by whatever reviews were done by them is assessed by the editor, and it is given either back to them if further reviews are needed, or it is rejected, or it is accepted, or it is sent back to the authors for further revision, right? With further questions and with further revisions. Once the entire process is done by the authors, it goes through the same pipelines. Either it is accepted and published after that, or it is rejected, or further revisions are required in that paper, right? That is how the peer review process actually works. Then, when we talk about ethics in research and publication, right? There are some ethics with respect to authorship in which an individual who has made a significant intellectual contribution to the study is actually deemed, fit for authorship. Then we talk about conflict of interest. When an investigator, author, editor, or reviewer has a financial personal interest or belief that could always affect his or that could affect his or her objectivity or inappropriately influence his or her actions, a potential conflict of interest exists, right? And if such a conflict of interest exists, it should be declared in a paper, right? For instance, it could be possible that I am doing some research work on a particular drug, but I am also a part of a pharmaceutical company who is working on very similar drugs and a very similar disease, right? So I will have some conflict of interest that if this drug works, I can commercialize it and make a monetary benefit out of it, right? So that kind of conflict I need to declare when I am publishing my paper, right? And plagiarism. It is one of the most common types of publication misconduct. Uh, and when one author deliberately uses another's work without permission, credit, or acknowledgements, right? Then one other thing that should definitely never be done is simultaneous submission, which can result into duplicate publication. So that means that just because of the fear of wasting time, in the review process, I should not submit the same study to two different journals, right? Because I have this fear that one journal might reject it, so that I will not have to start from the beginning with the other journal, right? Because there is always a possibility that both the journals accept it, right? What are we going to do then, right? It will be a misconduct. It cannot be published twice, right? It will be plagiarism between the journals itself. There will be a lot of copyright issue, and your research eventually will probably not be published at all because of the same reason, right? Also, we should never fabricate data, right? That is the worst, right? Your paper will definitely be retracted. You will, gain limelight for something very bad. So you should never fabricate data, right? In science, we are working towards understanding what is not known, right? If you want to manipulate that understanding by itself, you are manipulating science. And maybe people other than you are reading your research and building upon that work that you have done, right? Not knowing that you have fabricated data, right? That will really ruin science in general. Then, what is basically the difference between a research proposal versus a research paper? When we talk about a research proposal, it is a document proposing a research project, right? Either for a thesis work or for sponsorship of the proposed work, right? It is usually written for application of a grant or a fellowship, right? Then what is a research paper? It is a document that describes an original research on a specific topic and analysis and interpretation of research findings, right? So, generally, first we have research proposal. We execute this proposal. We get some observations, we analyze, and then we conclude it into a research paper, right? A research proposal must address the following, right? One is, what do you plan to accomplish, right? Why do you want to do it? How you are going to do it, right? So these are the questions that we need to have answers to, because whoever is sponsoring our research, for instance, will need to know these things, right? Also, if the proposal is for sponsorship, then why are we the best person to execute that particular proposal is also what we should mention, or we should answer that, right? Remember, when writing a research proposal for sponsorship, you are competing with other brilliant applicants, right? So we need to give them a reason to choose us, right? To give a dynamic scientific presentation, we need to know our audience. We need to tell audience members upfront why they should care and what's in it for them, right? We should say that you know the disease burden, this particular disease burden across across the world, right? Also, do you know specifically India contributes to this much percent of that entire disease burden? That is why we are wanting to look at this particular problem, something like that, right? We need to convey our excitement. We need to tell our story, starting with the context, framing the problem, providing highlights, and concluding by summing up key points. And we need to keep it simple. We don't need to throw jargons. Don't need to use very technical terms. We need to use terms that people who are not experts in the field will also understand, right? Then, while we are preparing a presentation, we need to remember that less is more. We should plan our talk well ahead and make slides accordingly. We should also include, keep in mind what is the target audience, whether it is a group of research scholars that are particularly working in a field similar to ours, so that we will give a lot of detailed research and outcome to them, or they are a general public who might not have the required knowledge about this subject. So we want to introduce this subject, and then we don't want to go very heavy or very deeply into the data. We need to just highlight what is the outcome of the data, something like that. We need to keep duration in mind, right? Whether it is a 1 hour presentation, we want to prepare accordingly, or it is a 5 minute presentation. So we need to really uh, present a very concise talk, right? Then lesser number of slides and lesser contents often help us. We should avoid animation unless it is required. So animation is like an intruder is an intruder in a cricket match unless it is an emergency, right? Also, we should use various colors only if it is required, right? So in this slide, you are seeing that I have whatever I wanted to highlight, I have kept it in bold, right? Or instead of this, I could have kept it in another color. It is not like every line that I'm keeping is in a different color because that is not required, right? So we should use only two, three colors in a slide to emphasize a point, but not otherwise. Undesired use of color may mislead the audience, right? Why is that particular thing written in red? Is there some significance for that being written in red and this in green? Does it mean that that is wrong and this is right? So these kinds of unnecessary things people will start thinking, right? We need to be consistent with the use of font or size or color or format. And we should also highlight one point at a time, right? We will not say that, like all of this I will just introduce at once. No, that I will not do. We will sequentially introduce things, right? Then when we decide a font to use in a slide, we need to see that it is large enough, right? The title should have larger font or it should be in a bolder face. Then we should have space in between the lines. We should use common and easy font types such as Times, Arial, Calibri, Aptos, etc. Right? Uh, then some bad examples of font and writing is this, right? So these are bad examples of the colors that are chosen. This is bad example of the size of the font. This is a bad example of the kind of font. This is a bad example because everything should never be in caps, right? When everything is in caps, it is actually difficult to read. It should always be in sentence case in this example, right? So this is a better example in which this is a better size of, the text, and the colors are also according to the background, right? So dark color in front in the light background and light color font in the dark background, right? That is what should be done. Now, these are also bad examples, right? Over here, it is very illegible what is written, right? Similar over here. So it is a very dark background and the colors, like even if we put black or white over here, it will not be able to, pop up very nicely because the background is that dark. So we should not prepare such kind of slides. Again, this is something we have already discussed that when we are explaining our research to an outsider, specifically to somebody who is not from a science background, we should keep in mind to first introduce the given, then go to the new, first start with the light, concept, go and build up into a heavy concept. And we should also always provide a brief introduction on the broad topic. We should define the research questions, state our hypothesis, state the approach, summarize the results, and then also conclude it very nicely, right? So yeah, with that, it brings us to the end of this revision session actually. Uh, so yeah, I have taken it at a stretch, at a very long stretch. So we were running a marathon today, but we have completed whatever was on plate for us. And that was just a brief revision of the entire course for you. Right, we have already done these question answer sessions before. So that also you can go through if you have applied for exams, and this is a theoretical session, just a recap of whatever has been taught to you. You can go through this also, which will help you in your exams, right? So having said that, uh, that is it from me. And if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to ask. So course related questions. Okay, I don't have any answers to any exam related questions per se that the NPTEL people might be able to answer better, right? Okay, so if not, you can actually post your questions on the discussion forum of the course, right? And if you have registered for the exams, all the very, very best to you. And hope you all do, brilliantly in the exams. And yeah, we'll meet again with another